War Room Sports is brought to you by Audible.com. Download a free audiobook of your choice by going to audibletrial.com/War Room Sports.
Black protectionism is a phenomenon that's not really new, but it's coming to bear today as we notice athletes in a position where they're more accessible to the public and they are exercising their power outside and away from their respective sports, financially, socially, and in the business realm. Black protectionism really as a concept states that black people tend to take a position which supports or protects a African American sports figure, or not even necessarily just sports figure, but celebrity, when they're under duress or they're in a situation in the media where they're being attacked by mainstream society, or the perception is that they're being attacked, and it lends itself to a very subjective perspective by the participants. It lends itself to even at times us sacrificing our value system to blindly support a person or thing based on our kindred race and our similar experiences. We all suffer from it. I do, and I can give you an example. I live and die, ride or die with my man AI, when in truth there are some occasions throughout his career where, he could have exercised more prudent judgment or taken a better path, but understanding where he comes from and what he's been through to get to where he is now, there's a sensitivity, and there's an understanding that unifies most black people because we do feel or perceive ourselves to have a similar plight in America going back through the generations. So I'm going to give the floor to somebody else, but that's an explanation of black protectionism from my viewpoint.
Well, to answer Jimmy's question, it definitely, in my eyes, it exists, and there is a big racial divide in sports, and you can kind of see that every time, an athlete gets in trouble, either black or white, because when that happens, now I speak from the black perspective, we always have those debates where someone brings up what the white guy did and what the white guy's punishment was, in comparison to what the black guy did. So I'm going to tell you 100% that I'm guilty of a level of black protectionism, but I try hard when I debate sports to try to keep it in an objective light. So sometimes, I might actually just be telling the God's honest truth, and it may sound a different way to someone else. This is where I think where the line should be drawn with the term black protectionism. When we're talking about athletes and their actual on-court, on-field performance, whatever sport you play, I don't think being black entitles you to game to be overstated by me. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a black player and I feel that, you're not as good as other people may think you are, I don't think anything's wrong with that. I think I'm really just being objective about the person's actual game. And there are some people who don't draw that line. There's no line in the sand. If you're black, you're one of the greatest at whatever you do, and, I just don't feel that. PJ, what you got on the subject?
No, I think I'm just kind of piggybacking off of what you said. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, pause, in my opinion, because I think black protectionism, in a sense, it's multifaceted, but it's kind of rooted in the basic instinct to kind of like protect your own. Right. So I think it goes back into the roots of, black history with slave trades and lynching and wrongful deaths and wrongful imprisonment. And I think that's when, when we see that happening even on from athletes in the sports world, when they are, say, on trial or they are going through some type of legal problems, especially in the criminal justice system, I think you'll find a large uproar, or I shouldn't say uproar, I should say a support system from black people trying to, stand up for that person so that the media, who's predominantly a white media, doesn't perpetuate and exaggerate kind of the transgressions of this particular athlete. So right. I think that one side of it, like we try to stand up and say, that's not right. Sometimes we'll have a white athlete, like you look at a Ben Roethlisberger versus a Kobe Bryant. It's like kind of Ben Roethlisberger's isn't as projected as Kobe's was when he was in Denver. But when that type of I guess protectionism, like when what you said, when it falls over into a standard sports debate where you're comparing two players that happen to be of different race, I think that's where you have to leave the protectionism alone. And I think that's what frustrates, I know that frustrates you, it frustrates all of us when we talk to somebody who may be, exercising black protectionism when we're just comparing two quarterbacks and how they play the game.
It's like unnecessary situations you're doing.
Right,
PJ,
right.
I remember,
think it's over, like you become a black protectionist in every debate that involves someone that's black with someone else that's another race, and you're not being objective whatsoever. So
I don't know if you remember.
That's my intro to it. So I'll pass it to you, Jim or Kill. I guess Jimmy.
I just wanted to ask you something real quick because I think you were still at Howard at the time. I think it happened during our first semester when the OJ verdict came down.
Yeah,
you remember that?
Like they were actually
we were standing in the punch out at Howard University. For those who don't know, the punch out is kind of like the pit on Different World. We were standing in there. They had a big screen TV, and we were actually waiting for the verdict to come down. Now, throughout this whole trial, we were 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old kids. We kind of knew, we weren't lawyers or pre-law majors or anything, but we kind of knew the whole time, like, this whole thing sounds a little fishy. But at the same time, the whole school damn near was down there rooting for OJ to get off. And when the verdict came down, it was like a cheer, like Howard had just won the national championship in football. The cheer was so loud. And, especially now being adults, like I have no doubt that either OJ did or had something to do with everything that went on. But
Marcus Allen did that.
Yeah, that was that was an example of black protectionism early in our lives. And
Gentlemen,
I don't know,
if I could weigh in and interject something quickly before we get to Akil and Jimmy, one of the things that happens with black protectionism is when you look at celebrities of comparable stature and status, but different ethnic background, particularly black and white, you see the disparity in the treatment of that individual in similar situations. And I think that Ben Roethlisberger and Kobe Bryant is an excellent example of looking at two players of a high stature in a similar situation and how one hasn't overcome Eagle, Colorado, and how the other, I'm going to assume, time will tell, but by 3 years from now, nobody's going to remember that Ben Roethlisberger had a sex case. I mean, and that's really, that is what the black community takes offense to and feels as though it has to protect its athletes, because not only are we harangued as people, outside of the limelight, but once we get into the limelight, the glare isn't used to illuminate us, it's used to burn us.
Now, can I make a quick comment? I want to make a quick comment.
Well, we have a caller. We have a caller on the line, just to let y'all know. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll make my quick comment, and this is Jimmy speaking. At the time of the OJ case, I was at Lincoln University, which is another HBCU, and you would have thought that, at the same thing, a championship was won. People came out the dorm with pots and pans, banging together, screaming, whistling, and the whole nine, and it had nothing to do with whether or not he butchered those people. The OJ case was a lot deeper than that. It was like for all the times that we have been, found guilty when in fact we were innocent, it's like we got one over. Nobody even thought about the fact that this was someone's family or what happened. So black protectionism definitely played a part. But with that being said, a lot of times we don't help ourselves. We have so many of our athletes and entertainers getting in trouble that, the bottom line is we don't help ourselves. So what happens is I had a debate with someone about McNabb, as usual, And the gentleman, the older gentleman, he honestly told me that he roots for McNabb because of McNabb's clean-cut image, because McNabb, in a sense, is the anti-Vic. So he holds McNabb in a high regard as a quarterback because of how McNabb makes us look as African Americans, as opposed to, say, a Michael Vick or an Allen Iverson or anyone else who's gotten in trouble.
Yeah,
so
great point. Great point. Jim, let's get to this caller. Let's get to this caller. Caller 972-821. You're in the war room. State your piece.
Yeah, I just tuned in and just kind of heard, what y'all was saying.
Where you calling from, brother?
Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
Dallas in the building. Yeah. We'll forgive you for being a Cowboys fan.
No, I'm calling from Dallas. I'm actually originally from New Orleans, so.
Okay,
I still got my test out about that.
No doubt.
I'm wondering, do y'all think this is, this black protectionism, will it ever go away? Are we as a people ever going to hold our athletes, our stars, the people who are up there responsible for the stuff that they do? Or are we always going to, want some leniency because of what has happened, to the people in our past, to our ancestors and whatnot?
Great
brother,
question.
that's an excellent question, and I'd like to grab hold and give you an answer, and then let the fellas kind of weigh in as well. So I thank you for calling in. I thank you for that question. My response to that is this: while there's definitely a level of accountability, personal accountability, and as a larger community, that we have to make our young people and our athletes and stars understand they are accountable and responsible for their actions, let's not lose sight of the fact that the society that we live in is still very much slanted against us. So black protectionism really is a reactive thing. It's not a proactive thing, it's a reaction. And it's almost reflexive. Sometimes it's not even conscious. We're not necessarily conscious that we're doing it, but when images are put in your head from almost birth until, you're an adult, that you're inferior, or I won't even go that far, but you've got a harder road to travel, it's natural that you want to prop yourself up. And it's natural for people to want to prop you up because you're a symbol of the oppression and the situations that they go through on a day-to-day. So to answer that question more directly, I think that we definitely have to hold our folks accountable for their actions, but we also have to address the institutionalized disparity in treatment that we see these athletes and celebrities go through. Somebody else want to address that, call?
Yeah, but to continue what you're saying, but who's going to address it? And I do feel, to directly answer your question, I don't think this issue will ever go away. And like Brad said, it's because, it's kind of, ingrained in our heads that we have a harder road. So for some people, some people are going to take that and work harder at what they do and work hard to be a better person, but some people are going to use that as an excuse. Yeah, it's going to be their crutch for the rest of their life.
That's what I'm getting into. Not as far as celebrities, but just when you get out of that realm and you get into the regular community, you see a lot of that. As far as people who are doing wrong, as far as a lot of young men who are selling drugs and just making babies and not doing nothing, and people want to they want to stand up and try and protect these guys too, because we've had an unfair road. Here in America, and it's like, where does it stop? Do we stop it with the athletes? Do we stop it with the people? Because, like you said, we have to start holding ourselves responsible for some of the things that's going on. We've had a lot of oppression. That's true, and I'm not taking nothing away from that. But at the same time, we have to hold ourselves responsible for, a lot of what's going on in our communities.
I agree.
All right, we feel you, and we're going to continue on, but thanks for your call, brother. We appreciate it.
All right.
Real quick, can I mention in the chat room, L. White Music made a comment. She says, look at T.I. and Tiny. He did a TV show documenting his road to prison, talking to young people about what not to do. Then when he gets out of jail, runs to the studio to make a song about him and his wife, then gets caught again with drugs in his limo. And we all know people have stepped up to protect T.I.
Exactly.
I mean, look at Bishop Eddie Wrong. I call him Bishop Eddie Wrong. People have jumped to his defense, and they're actually calling this, the people alleging this. They're like talking dirty about them.
Yeah. One thing I would say about them, and one thing I would say in reference to like what the caller was saying, I think the black protectionism, I don't look at it as like people in like the inner cities and guys doing things like, drugs and having babies and committing crimes. I don't think that they're doing that with the belief that they'll have black protectionist support that's going to help them beat the judicial system. I don't believe that that's their motive at all. I think the black protectionism comes from a lot of the white people and black people viewing the criminal justice system differently. And I don't, and as long as like as long as racism exists, and as long as there's still in like inequities in the decisions or the verdicts that come down for blacks versus whites, I think that the black protectionism is not necessarily a bad thing. I think people look at it as something to help them, but I think what the difference between a lot of blacks and whites is a lot of times white people rush to judgment, and a lot of times white people rush to persecute someone off of allegations. But black people understanding the criminal justice system and things that have happened in our past that still happen to this day, I think we are not as quick to rush to judgment and to wait sometimes. And I can't speak for everybody when I'm saying we. I understand that. But I think we know how things can get portrayed and how media can sway things, especially the majority of white media can portray things and can like dictate public opinion based on what they're pushing out to us. So I think sometimes the black protectionism is a good thing in the sense that we're just not as quick to rush to judgment just yet.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Let me add a piece about to antithesis to what Jimmy and Devin and Paul, PJ shared with being at a predominantly African American school during the OJ trial, and me being at Lafayette College, which is a predominantly Caucasian school with 70 black people out of 2,000. I remember where I was. I was in Lafayette's version of the Punch-Out or the Pit, and just to see, the Caucasian students, just to see the look on their faces when it was found that he was innocent was just kind of like, oh man, like he got off, or it was kind of like sad, and then kind of like the the few African American students who were around, we kind of looked like, well, hey, I guess that just makes up for all the years of us being lynched, when it wasn't.
We were in totally different environments that day.
Yeah, exactly.
We got still probably had to watch us back while we were running around cheering and all.
Yeah. Gentlemen and listeners, I wanted to share something with you that kind of ties into Paul's statement, and it comes from a discussion about the LeBron James's Q rating being low now that the decision is in. A Texas professor on why the 6 least liked sports personalities are all African American. There's a notion that black people are more primitive, more violent, aggressive, and also there's a suggestion that if blacks are going to compete in the same spaces as whites, they need to do so with deference. And so it tends to be those black athletes who tend to be more commercial, less aggressive, less cocky, less brash, are those that tend to be more liked in wider society. And those that tend to show any sign of aggression or show any sign of lacking deference towards white authority seem to be more problematic. That's messed up. That's what really rubs the African American community the wrong way. And someone went on the site, Roethlisberger is still considered more likable than Kobe Bryant, despite the fact that both fought sexual assault allegations and both were cleared. Bryant's case was dismissed 6 years ago. LeBron James is selfish for pursuing a championship. Brett Favre is selfless for pursuing the same thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because that's kind of what I touched on earlier when Jimmy brought up the LeBron headline with Maverick Carter saying that it was a racial thing. That was my opinion of it. I thought that because LeBron was one of those guys. He was one of the commercial guys that everybody loved. You know, he didn't seem threatening to wider America. So now that he's gone on TV and he's kind of proven to everybody that he's also, you know, this me guy, this selfish guy or whatever, now all of a sudden nobody likes him. Now, you know, I've had my issues with LeBron over a totally different thing, you know, and it all had everything to do with basketball. But from what I read, a lot of black people didn't like the decision, but it was for totally different reasons than what you just read from, you know, from white America. Now, black people didn't really like the decision because they felt like, okay, LeBron's embarrassing us. He's sitting here throwing up the white flag saying, I can't do this by myself. And we all kind of looked at it, like Charles Barkley said, as a punk move. Not we all, because, you know, I argue with a lot of black people every day who has no problem with it whatsoever. But like you said, on the other side, it's a totally different subject for them. You know,
sure.
And it's not about him saying, I can't do this by myself. It's all about him stepping out there as a black guy and showing that he has some power and has some control. And I think a lot of people just really don't like that.